And with the switch, what the metaphor is this woman making one decision and choosing from several options. Now, if she was an if-else statement, she could be choosing from lots of different shoes, but she could also be choosing, if it's a blue dress, I could go for a blue pair of shoes. If it's raining outside, I could put on a pair of boots. If it's a full moon, I'm going to put on my evening shoes, whatever. So if she was an if statement, she would be making lots of different questions. Is it raining outside? Is it Monday? Whatever. With a switch statement, she's only making one question, and she's looking at the different options. So that's kind of the difference between a switch and a whole series of if else. So when you have to choose decisions from lots of different questions, then you have to use an if else. If you want a more elegant solution and you only need to make one choice and come up from a lot of different answers, like these rows of shoes, then the switch is the best for you. Now, we found out as we started getting more adept at programming, and as programmers, as we got more adept at working with our clients and our customers, that there was one thing that was in common, and that was there's usually a story. So people, in general, think in stories. And so as a programmer, what you want to do is find out what that person's story is. If you come in and say, well, I'm going to write a program, I'm going to do a series of if statements, switch statements, and give you an answer, they're going to kind of look at you cross-eyed. If you come to the client and say, what do you need me to do, or tell me about your problem, then they're going to tell you what's going to turn out to be a story, and you can translate that into your program. So here's the story. We have Sue Johns, and she's the owner of Pizza Pete's. And she has several stores, and she wants a web page that shows what number to call for their area. Now, each store covers multiple zip codes. Right now, there's only 2 stores, but Sue's thinking of growing and getting really big, not only in this area, but nationally. And she wants to show the coverage area and also to be able to expand in the future. She also wants, if the customer is outside of the coverage area, she wants to tell the customers, that, well, we can't deliver your pizza now, but you can go and tell them the nearest store location. So this is a perfect application for a switch statement. So when you hear that story, your brain should be going, yeah, this is a switch statement. And what it is, it's one input, which would be the zip code, and it would be against multiple choices. So we're going to ask the customer, what's your zip code? And then we're going to go down the list and say, okay, if your zip code matches this, you're in this area. If it matches something else, you're in another area. If it doesn't match any of those, then here's the closest store. So everybody got the story down, Pat? So we're going to set up our basic HTML page. Put a script in the head, put one in the body, and we're going to do a function called getStoreNumber. So let's go into our code, and the first thing we want to do is type in our function. And every function has your parentheses and your curly braces. Notice my naming convention. I start my functions with lowercase, and then I use camel case for the new words. And what do you think I should do for my first line of code? I'll do a test line, document write, and debug inside get store number. I'm going to put a break in there in case I put anything after it. And then I'm going to go down into my body, and I'm going to call my function. Also, at the end of my function, I'm going to put a comment, say end of get store number. So as I write lots and lots of code in here, I'll be able to keep track of where this curly brace relates to. I'm going to look at it real quick, make sure it works. And I can see my program works. Yay! I love it when it works. Now, we could go inside of our function and we could set up a variable and do everything inside of our function. But I want to show you where we can do code that's loose and then pass in variables. I want to have you practice passing in variables. So we're going to write some loose code down here in the body, and this is going to be, we're going to declare a variable, and I forget what the name of that variable is. User input, a good name. And I'm going to initialize it with just a blank. Oh wait, I think they want me to initialize it with 56001. And then I'm going to use the prompt to get input from the user. And I'm going to put in a default as well, which is 56001. Now, whenever you use the prompt, what do you have to do? This is getting input from the user. What are we going to do with that input? Put it in a variable. How are we going to do that?
Pass it in.
So tell me the code. What code should I type to pass it in?
Get store number, and then in parentheses put user input.
Nope, not. I don't want to do that yet. I got my prompt from my user, so I want to store that in a variable. How am I going to do that? What variable am I going to store it into? User input. Okay, there's my variable. How am I going to get the information from the prompt into my variable? Do my assignment operator, which looks like to us as an equal sign, but it's an assignment operator. So now this is going to take whatever the person types in, and it's going to assign it into user input. And just to check things out, I'm going to say document write. And I could do a debug again. Debug input was user input. And I've learned to always put a BR in there too. Now, why did I put this second 56001 in my prompt function? My prompt function has two parameters. The first one is asking the question, and what's the second one? It's a default value. Why did I put that in there?
So that way there's something that you can test and just hit enter.
Yeah, so I don't have to spend time typing in numbers. I could just hit enter and test my program really quickly. Now, when this program goes live, most likely I'll take this out. Unless the majority of people are in 56001.
Wouldn't you want to keep something in there just as like an example so that you know what you're looking for?
You could, but if you want to set up an example for the user, it's better to do it like this. So you could say 56001 like this, and just put it on there so they see example. It's real irritating for people to have to delete something that's already there so they can type their own stuff. But as a developer, you want this information in there because you don't want to type 56001 1,000 times. It takes too much time. All right, save our program. Go in and try it out. Hit enter, and we're good to go. And here's what our output looks like. Now, here's the switch statement. This is the lady making decision on the shoes. Here's the lady making the decision right here, and this is the different shoes that she can choose from. Now, we're going to put this information in our function. And I'll see if I can go a split screen here so I can type it along with you. So I'm going to go up into the function. Again, I'm going to comment out my my document right line, and then I'm going to put my switch in. Now watch how I do this. I put in my framework first, along with my comments. And then I build up my case statements. And I indent my case statements 3 spaces in. Now, some of you may notice I purposely have a mistake in this code. And I'll tell you where it is. It's on case 56008. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Also, I want to talk about where user input came from. See where that comes from first. If you look at our code, where is user input? It's down here in this script block. Well, it being down here, this function doesn't know about it at all. So what we're going to have to do is pass it in. So we're going to use these parentheses and we're going to pass in user input. So that's going to take a copy of user input, whatever the user typed in, and it's going to send it up to our function. So we're in the body of the code now. And we're going to take our user input variable and put it inside the parentheses. So that says, go to the function, get store number, and take along this input. But we have to tell the function to expect this. So we have to go up here and put user input. Now what this does is it declares a variable called user input. And so when we call a function and we say get store number user input, we're going to initialize that with this value. So we're going to take that and assign it into here. Now normally what I like to do is do a short version of it, so like say user in, but then I have to come down here on my switch statement and say user in as well. That keeps me from getting these two things mixed up. If they're the same, you're going to lose track of where you are in your code. But right here, we know we're in this block of code. And when we call it, remember, it's going to take a copy of this value, user input, and it's going to assign it to this variable called user in. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. And then we're going to use our user in to compare it to which pair of shoes or which zip code we want. Now, how is this going to work? Well, we're going to take the zip code that the user typed in, and we're going to say, does that equal 56001? If that's true, then we're going to run this code. After we run that code, we'll run a break, and that says, oh, we're all done with making our decision. Leave the premises, leave the switch. So let's say they typed in 56999. Does that equal 56001? Does it equal 56002, 56008, 56009? None of those. So what's going to happen? This statement, this default statement, is going to run. It's going to say, sorry, not available in your area. And then it's going to switch out. So let's run our code and see what happens. Make sure you save it. I'll do a refresh. I'll use my test data, and it's going to say, sorry, not available in this area. Whoa. So how are we going to debug this? What are the steps for debugging? What's the first thing we want to check with to make sure everything is good? Because do you see, I typed in 56001 and it said not available in this area. What did we expect to find? It should have done this area 1. It should have done this, and it didn't. No, I put in 56001. That's my sample data that I have down here. I can see, I use this data right down here.
Is it because it's a string?
No, I want to know the debugging steps. So it's not to solve this particular problem. I want you to tell me the steps to go through to solve every problem. Oh, before we do FireBug, what do we do? Yeah, we check our HTML and make sure it's valid. Is my HTML valid? Yes, my HTML validator said everything is good. Now, if I had a red X here, then I'd have a problem. Okay, so that's good. What's the next thing you said? FireBug? All right, let's open up FireBug. All right, FireBug. What do I check in FireBug first? Okay, go to console, make sure it's enabled, and then what? Everything looks fine to me. I got to refresh my page. Excellent. So I have to refresh the page because who knows? Oh, it looks good. Now some warnings are coming up because I have those turned on. I'm just going to ignore these cyan warnings. It's something that I have set up in my console. Let me turn off some of these. Let me try again. There you go. So I can see that my syntax is correct. I don't have any syntax errors. So what am I going to do next? Step through it. So how do I step through it? Go to my script tag. Scroll down to my script. Where should I put my breakpoint? Let's go down here to where we get the data, okay? And right before I call the get store number. And then I'll refresh the page. There gets my prompt. And I can look over here and see that it's 56001. So I'm going to take 56001 and pass it up. By the way, what type of information is 56001? Is it an integer, a float, or a string, or a Boolean? It's a string. How do you know it's a string? Because it's in quotes. All right, before I click on the next button, what's going to happen? What's going to happen next? I'm right here at get store number user input with store input is a value of 56001. What's going to happen next? Yeah, I'm going to go up to my function along with that variable value. So jump up to my function. Here I am up in my function. And now do you see that user in has become 5601? What happened to user input? It's not on this list any longer. Well, we didn't rename it. It's out of scope. It's down in the body, and the program doesn't know about it anymore because we're inside this function. So it's out of scope. That's why we had to pass the variable in so we could transfer that value. So basically, this function, this user in, is a copy of what we sent from the body. It's like a private message. And what type of variable is it? It's a string because it has quotes around it. All right, so our switch user in, what's going to happen next when we click the next button? What line is going to run next? Nope, not going to display because I had that commented out. So, and I'm right here at this line. I'm already past that line. What's going to happen next? Isn't it going to go down to here and compare what we have for user in against case? Whoa, it skipped right past there. How come? What case, what type number is that at case? Is it a string or a number? A float or a Boolean? It's a number. Well, what's 56001 as a number? 556,001. Is that the same as 56001, the string? Oh, so what do we have to do? All right, so let's go back to our code, go back to our switch, and we're going to compare it to strings. We can only compare strings to strings, or numbers to numbers. So go in and change all of those to quotes. Now, on my editor, it changes it to red. On Notepad++, what is it? What color? Oh, is it red on Notepad++ too? Oh, good. Oh, it's gray. Okay, so strings are gray on Notepad++. But they're very different than the number. Do you see what number is blue on mine? What's number on Notepad++?
Red.
Red. Oh, how confusing is that? All right. So now I'm going to run the page again, use the same input. All I have to do is hit enter. And my breakpoint's down here. I know it's going to jump up because we've already gone through this. I know user in is a string. And now look where it stopped. It found that the case 56001 matches the string 56001. So it says document write, I'm in user in area 1. So what's going to happen next? It's going to do what? Nope, nope, nope. On this line right here, document write in area 1. What's going to happen when I step over that? It'll display. It'll do a document write. There it is, right up there like I expected. Now what's going to happen next? It's going to break, which means the program's going to break, or it's going to, no, it's not going to stop. What's it going to do? It's going to get out of the switch. It says we're all done making our decisions in the switch, so leave the switch. So we expect to go down to line number 29, right? Or 30? Right down here at the end? Let's see. Aha, went to 929. It finished the function, and it went back to where it was, and now it's all done. Wait a minute. Area not available this time. We got a mistake there. I'm going to take this breakpoint off and just run it again and see what happens. There, and I'm good. It was just, I was tripping up on my breakpoints. But you see, as you're using FireBug and stepping through, you want to ask yourself, what's going to happen when I do this line? And you have to answer yourself, because your brain will say, never mind, just go on, it'll work. But you want to ask the question, because then when you get surprises like this, your brain will say, oh, wait, there's something wrong here. Now, this is pretty interesting. Notice that they, remember back to the story, that there was several zip codes for each area. So there could be 56001, 56002, 56003. Do you see that each of these would match? So let's give it a try. Let's go in here, run our program again. Now I took my breakpoints off because I have my program debugged. So I'm going to type in 56002, and that's in area 1. Well, let me try 56008. What do we expect for output? Area 2. Let me try that again. Uh-oh, it's not working. 56008 isn't working. What are we going to do? Check our code, but let's put a breakpoint. Am I going to put a breakpoint down here where we first started? No, we already know that code works. Where am I going to put my breakpoint? How about right here at the switch statement? No, we already got the code debugged down to here, right? Where are we having problems? Right here at 56008. So do you see where you put your breakpoint is where you're having problems, not 100 steps before you get to the problem. zoom in on where your problem is. And this goes back to one of the programming fundamentals I talked about at the beginning of the course, is as a programmer, you want to look at the big picture, all right? You want to look at the big picture like a hawk over the field looking for where the mice are, or even better, hear the story from the user. Well, let's go to the story. Here's the story. This is like looking over the pasture, like the hawk is looking over everything, the big picture. And then when you start coding, you want to zoom in with your binocular vision and zoom in on where it's broken. So let me go into my debugger. And now I'm zooming in with my binocular vision, and I'm putting a breakpoint right where it's broken. Again, we'll put in the same zip code. I might have to put a breakpoint up here on my switch because it went right past there. (56008). When I say next, I expect it to go down to 56008. And what's going to happen next? I'm telling it to break out of my switch. So what's wrong with this code at line 2324? Why not? Oh, do I have these things in the wrong order maybe? So am I putting on my shoes and then putting my socks on? Yeah. So let's go in the code and fix that. But do you see how I found it out? I zoomed in on where the problem was, and then I stepped through and I asked myself, what's going to happen next? And I says, oh, it's going to break. It's going to go out of the switch. So let's go into our code and fix that. By the way, this is an actual mistake I made when I was writing this tutorial. And instead of erasing it and fixing it so you thought every piece of code I wrote is perfect, I decided to leave it in so we could go through that debugging. And what about 56009? Don't I want to put a break there too? What if I leave that break off? What's going to happen? Well, let's leave it off and see. First, I'm going to check my 008. I'm going to turn my breakpoint off and just run my program. So 56008, I'm in area 2. Hey, I'm doing good. Oh, what was the next one? 56009? And what happened? It went into area 3 and it said, sorry, not in this area. Well, boy, what a way to confuse the user. So I'm going to put my breakpoint back on my switch, run my program, 56009. Notice how I'm being very consistent with my data that I'm testing. And there's my document right saying I'm in area 3 with 56009. Cool. And then what happened? It kept working down the switch and it output that statement. What did I want it to do? I wanted it to leave. So I'm going to have to put a break statement here so it doesn't do the rest of the code. So do you see what the break does? Is it gets us out of the code. If I take these breaks out, it would have said in area 1, area 2, area 3, not available in this area, every time we ran the program. By putting the break statement in there, we're saying, we're done here, move on. Oh, great question. Could we put a range in there? In VB.NET, you can because the language was written for it. But in JavaScript, you have to do each individual item. Yeah. So it would be, it's that lady going around that circle of shoes saying, do I want this pair of shoes or this pair of shoes or this pair of shoes? And you can't say, do I want my loafers, or do I want my high heels, or do I want my boots? Which would be a range. It depends on the language, though. But that's a really observant question. I like that question. So, and oftentimes you'll see 5, 10, 15 of these things all stacked up. Don't forget that break statement. Here's a really quick summary. First of all, notice we put the C data in right away so we didn't have to fight our HTML validator. I think you all are used to that now. I also wrote some loose code where I got the input from the user, and the basic reason I did that was to re-emphasize passing in values, passing in parameters. Oh, good observation. That's left over from HTML yesterday. We were setting anchors, so that's extra code. Thanks. I thought I'd gotten rid of all of it, so that was an anchor in there. Wrong class. So I'm showing you how to pass in variables. And then we talked about comparing strings to strings when you do a switch. I highlighted the break statement so you know when to get out of the switch. And I showed you some tricks on debugging, setting breakpoints, and stepping through. What's the question you want to ask and answer as you do breakpoints? What's going to happen next? And don't forget to answer yourself, because what's your brain going to want to do? Your brain is going to say, never mind, it's okay. This line is going to work. This line isn't broken. You know? So you have to force yourself to pay attention and say, what's going to happen next? And then come up with an answer. Now, after you do this a while, it comes real natural. Yeah.
Well, like this one you have 5, 6. Did you just do maybe like a comma, then 5, 6, 0, 0, 2?
No, you have to do it this way. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it'd be really nice to say case 56001, comma 56002, 56003, but JavaScript isn't written that well. It's written real strictly this way. So, too bad, I know. Oh, the other thing that I highlighted here is notice my indenting. So here's my curlies on my function, match up with my F. On the switch, it matches up with the S and my comments. And then each time I indented 3 spaces. So here you see all my case statements line up. And inside the case statements, I have another indent. This makes it much easier to maintain your code, either to yourself in the future or to somebody else that will be fixing your code behind you.